bitter person finds it impossible to speak peaceably with others in their family. What does that mean? It means that people who are in emotional pain and people who are bitter kick anyone who gets close to the wound. It's their primary defense mechanism. Let me give you an example. If we were out hiking and climbing up in the woods and you fell off some rocks and had a tragic accident where you broke your leg, and it was a compound fracture where the bone is actually protruding from the leg, and I came to you and I said, listen, we've got to get you to the hospital. Just hold on there for just a minute. I've got some guys coming. We've got a stretcher. We're going to move you and get you to the hospital. But we can't move you in this condition. I've got to somehow just get that bone back through your pant leg and line it back up, and then we'll put some bark around it, and then we'll duct tape it and hold it and immobilize it so we can move you. And I said, listen, all you have to do is just wait. Because it's only going to take me about 30 seconds to pull that bone back through there and line it up. And so as I reach down for your right ankle to do that, I only have one question. What are you going to do with your left foot? Well, you're going to kick me. Why? Don't you know I'm trying to help you? Sure you do. It's not a question of knowledge. It's a question of pain. And people who are in pain kick the very people who are closest to them and who are trying to help. The second characteristic of a bitter person is that they speak with barbed and cutting words, hurting others deeply. Words to a person who is bitter are like weapons. They're honed to perfection. They wield those words like knives. A critical and a caustic spirit becomes their ally. And the slightest injury becomes major, and they struggle in maintaining relationships. Bitter people are people who are wrapped in barbed wire. The third characteristic of a bitter person is that a bitter person uses language characterized by hostility and suspicion. You see, hostility and suspicion consume tremendous amounts of emotional energy. A person may feel safe, but they are very isolated and alone. It's like feeding a dog at mealtime, and you reach down to grab his bowl because you want to put something else in it, and as soon as you get down there, the dog just starts to growl. Well, that growling serves a purpose. It gives the dog a sense of control. But the dog who is growling cannot eat while he's growling. So literally, at that point, when he is growling, he's starving to death. A bitter person has emotional guard dogs constantly on duty. The fourth characteristic of a bitter person is that a bitter person criticizes what others say or do. By pointing out others' faults, they don't have to focus on their own. Criticism gives justification. It keeps accusers at bay. The easiest way to build themselves up, cut other people down. And that's the life of a bitter person. The fifth characteristic is that a bitter person disrespects others and is unthankful. A bitter person has a difficult time showing respect for others, and it is especially evident in their inability to show gratitude. You see, gratitude says, I have a need. And if I have a need, then I'm weak. If I'm weak, then I could be vulnerable. If I'm vulnerable, I could get hurt. If I could get hurt, I can feel pain. So don't show gratitude. I don't want to feel pain, so don't be weak. Don't be needy. Bitterness robs them of joy and in turn, thankfulness. The sixth characteristic is that a bitter person rehearses the past over and over again. By rehearsing the past over and over again, their batteries are recharged. With recharged batteries, they can create verbal silver bullets so that they can use these in a moment's notice. Bitter people are not free to enjoy the present, and they certainly can't look forward to the future, so they're locked into the past. The seventh characteristic is that a bitter person twists the motives and intentions of others when they try to come alongside to help. Bitterness twists the heart so that the eye cannot clearly see. The quickest way to defend oneself is to attack another person's motives. That's where the bitter person is coming from. Because to question the motive is to pretend to read the heart, which gives a false sense of power. So if you share something with them, they'll say, I know why you said that. You said that because. And once a bitter person judges you at a motive level, you have no recourse. Judge, jury, and sometimes executioner have already come in. The ability to discern motives becomes a narcotic to a bitter person. They'll tell you why you did something. The eighth characteristic of a bitter person is that a bitter person resists change or help. The longer bitterness remains in the individual, the more embedded it becomes. A small child can get a splinter embedded in their finger and they can come to you and they can say, I want it out, help me, help me, help me. And so as they put their finger out there to have you help them as a parent, you reach for that and instantly they pull their hand back. I want help, but don't touch it. It's a little different for a bitter person. The splinter that they have in their finger serves a purpose for them. It gives them justification and in some cases vindication for their actions and their attitudes and their behaviors. And so they don't want it out. Some people prefer a known hell over an unknown heaven. The ninth characteristic is that a bitter person strives to keep past injuries fresh as though they happened yesterday. They must keep the past alive. Any perceived injustice, whether real or imagined, is retrieved from the memory banks at a moment's notice. And they can recount the event, the players, the motives, the injustices ad infinitum. No one is able to resurrect the past as quickly as those who desperately need it to keep it fresh, to maintain their purpose. Like ghastly ghouls, not content to just sit at a grave, they need to dig the grave up. And it's a resurrection, but not of hope and deliverance, but of pain and tortured memories. The last characteristic of a bitter person is that a bitter person exhibits indifference and numbness toward the hurts they inflict on others. Bitterness is emotional Novocaine. Bitter people are insensitive to the hurts they inflict on others. My dentist gives me a feeling when I go to him and he has to fill a cavity. He gives me a feeling of numb. And he specifically gives me that feeling so I don't feel another feeling, pain. Perhaps the most painful aspect of living with a bitter person is to see their apparent indifference to other people's feelings. Words strike like a snake. Venom can flow, but the bitter person is unmoved, even indifferent to how others have received it. So what is bitterness? Anger plus unresolved grief or loss equals bitterness. Once a person is angry, and that anger is embedded in their life, it never just stays as anger. It will change over time. And if they're unable to resolve a grief or loss issue, over time it can distill and morph into bitterness.